Okay, so good day and welcome to the first podcast or video podcast of horror stories of Glenda and Fritz, or in Tagalog, that's mga horror stories ni Glenda at Fritz. So I'm one of the writers, no, an author of that book. My name is Fritz, and this is my wife, Glenda.
Hi, mga psycho. Hi, psychos. Welcome to our first ever video podcast. And my name is Glenda. I'm Fritz's wife, and we wrote these books together. So today we're going to discuss about it and answer at least 5 questions about the books. So without further ado, let's get started with a Q&A.
Okay, so okay, just saying, these 5 questions actually it goes with the background on what uh, details on about the books and how it was written. So let's start.
So the first question would be, what made you decide to write?
Okay, so it was around, I guess, 2014 when we wrote the first book, which is the Tagalog version, which is the mga horror stories ni na Glenda Fritz. And currently we're in the Philippines, and from time to time we travel back and forth from our own hometown. And currently I'm from Iloilo City, and my wife is from
City.
yeah from City. So and at the time, it was 2013, uh, when I lost my niece. Of course, my niece was the inspiration of the books. And uh, when my niece passed away, it was a bit tragic. That is why all those uh, emotions that was kept in since 2013, it needs to break out. It's like an outlet. Uh, so that's how the horror stories in Glenda and Fritz was born. So it's a fictional story, but it draws out all the emotion happened that year, 2013, 2014. So it's like when you go to a psychologist and a therapy, and the way that they wanted you to pour in all your emotions. Of course, it's the same way when the book was written. So at least after the book was written, a little bit we move on from that tragic incident. Okay, and of course, and the succeeding stories was came about uh, by our creative minds, no? My wife and me, and some of which happens in life, some are fiction. So it's a combination of both, and just twists and turns, and of course, before we wrote the book, each of us have different what we call this experiences. Like me, what got me started from storytelling, not writing, of course, when I was young, was my father because he brought me a box of Tagalog comic books, okay, or comics. It was popular at the time, and it helped me on my Filipino language or Filipino subject. And after those boxes where I have already read each of the comics because it was uh, the comics was not Marvel or DC because it was a bit how do you call this high priced, no, or not that cheap in the Philippines way back around I don't know 1987 or much more less or higher because can't really point out the year. So Tagalog or Filipino comics, especially the horror genre at the time, was pretty patok, no? In Tagalog term, patok, no? Or how do you say it in English? I mean, a lot of people are reading comics at the time, right? Especially in different ages, aside from newspaper. So after all those comics books in the box, where I have read them all, I visited the comic stores, okay, and those comic store in Ilo, I think there were already uh, changed from a comic store to a carinderia, no? Or a what do you call this in English? Cafeteria. Cafeteria. Much more. I hope my English is correct. Is that you can rent a comics by 1 peso, okay? With 1 peso, you can rent one comics. Then you can read it in their stall. So usually I can read at least much more or less around 1 to 3 comics because my baon, because in baon, the money my parents gave me at the time is not that big while I was in elementary years. So, and again, that gets me going. So, 1 peso per day, a day, or twice a day, 4 times a day. When I get on the high school, then I was able to buy the comics because I have to save money from my baon. Then I can buy the comics, and I have a lot of comics at home. Eventually, I'm not a collector, so they went to because turn into coal when you cook rice and etc. But that experience helped me in my how to enhance my Tagalog at those time. Okay, so that's how I get started in storytelling. Then after reading those books, then you can tell your own stories of guess. Then I didn't even write until I met my wife. Okay, so when I met her, talk. I tell her stories that just pop in my head within the 15 to 20 minutes time.
He forces me to listen to it.
Come again?
He forced me to listen to it.
Yeah. I don't know, what is the movie that is similar to that?
Sassy
Sassy Girl?
Girl.
Yeah, I'm her sassy boy.
Yeah, he's the sassy boy. And he would always tell me these stories, and they are out of this world stories sometimes. And I'm usually forced to listen to them because I don't have a choice. But he's actually a good storyteller, and he has a vivid imagination and has a lot of great stories that sometimes I just
Cannot
I would
stand.
sleep. I cannot stand. Oh no, I can't stand it. I mean, I listen to it, but sometimes it's too long that I fall asleep.
Yeah, and he missed all the highlights on those last
So
15
then,
minutes.
yeah. So then gonna encourage him that he should write his stories because it's good if somebody or some people would be able to listen to it because they're actually amazing stories. Yeah, and so he kind of started writing it in a blog before.
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember I documented some of his stories in a blog. Maybe we can plug the blog later where those stories are. But there's just a lot of crazy stories that he's told me as a storyteller because of his vivid imagination. But we've never had a chance to write them. So this time that he's already decided to write the stories that is in his mind, and that's how we got started with the book.
Yeah, and of course, before my wife, the one that's listening to my stories was actually my niece. She was the one that would ask me, would just come right at me and say, "Toto, tell me a story, okay?" So tell her a story right away, anything that pops in my head, imagination, and so on and so forth. Uh, yeah. So so that's what made me decide to write. How about you? What made you decide to write?
Yeah, on my end, again, I was forced by my husband to write the story because he's writing this book, and he's been encouraging me because I've been really inactive in writing stories, and I think that my creative mind is trapped somewhere, so I can't really write something. But when he encouraged me to do it, and we I actually yeah, I actually agreed with him, and yeah, I wrote one story for that book, just one, and most of the stories there are his stories, which are amazing, and you guys should read the stories that he wrote. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so it's my husband that made me decide to write a story.
Yeah.
He
So
inspired me to do it.
we both inspired each other. We inspire each other, and that's I guess that's part of our love story.
Yeah, always.
Okay. So let's do the next question.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So question number 2.
Question number 2 is why the horror genre?
Why not the horror genre? I mean, I was a big fan because aside from comics, uh, I'm also a avid movie viewer. Okay. Um, Usually, as I said, uh, I would watch movies. Actually, it was my parents who ins- influenced me to be a how do you call this? Who would love to watch movies? Okay, because it started with a television with a black and white screen that looks like an aparador with the open and close uh, window. Then you have only limited channels there. But then after that, we bought the first colored TV, which is a bit small, I guess 14 inches, like our laptops nowadays. Then after that, we have the 21 inches um, that my sister sang and made it explode.
Shout out
Shout
to
out
Manang.
to Manang. Okay, and after that, from VHS, we weren't able to buy a Betamax because it was the VHS genre already. And it was my mom and my dad nanay and tatay, no? Who first rented, no, in different stalls in Iloilo City. You have different accounts and different uh, video rentals, and need to borrow 1 to 2 tapes, VHS tapes. Then after that, you have to return it, and so on and so forth. Then later, Of course, there's the VCDs, DVDs, of course, the theaters, cinema in movie houses. I guess all of the movie houses in Iloilo City I was able to visit. Okay. Then after that, uh, of course, with my parents, and at times I need to save again on my baon and to watch. No, I love watching movies alone. No, of course, I also love watching movies with my friends and family. And at times, I can remember when I was young, my mom, I think my mom, because I was in Baluarte Elementary School, I guess, um, we went to a barrio just near the school because some of them we visited a co-teacher of my mom because my mom is a elementary teacher. Then we went to their house while they were doing their own thing. I just sit in with their kids, and I don't know if their cousins, etc. And we watch Jungle Book. Yeah, we watch Jungle Book, and it was crazy at times because even though you don't know those kids, but that's Jungle Book. That's a movie. So that's the most important part of that memory. And then after that, before I graduated college, because I was an avid, what do you call this? Video renter? I don't know what's the proper term. Because I was an avid borrower of VCDs on a video city in East North Street in Iloilo, and of course in SM City, Iloilo. I applied on Video City actually. I applied on Video City, and while I was stay. Of course, it was such a nice fit because I was already a customer there, and the exam was all about movies. So it was much easy for me to answer. But I don't know. Maybe I just I score fair in that exam. But then I was able to work on Video City twice. It was summer on 2002, then before I graduated in 2003. Okay, so all my life, those movies, comics, filled in those those inspiration and how I write my stories. And of course, on the top of those, they call this top of those list of genre was horror. Okay, I love watching horror movies, and I'm pretty scared. Uh, if you can relate to it when you watch movies, then you have your hands on your face, then you pick in the middle, in the whole middle of your hand, just trying to watch what is happening. But again, it's pretty horror is horror genre is very because relaxing genre when you watch movies, because aside from example, if you watch comedy, of course you try to laugh, etc. Then you're stress free after that. It's the same with the watching horror movies. But then of course you get stressed while watching. Then you get distressed after watching. So of course, going back, why horror genre? It's because of the tragedy that happened to my niece. So it's what triggered me to write on a horror genre. But of course, aside from that, I also read a lot movies. Sorry, Yeah, because some movies are Korean and you need to read the subtitles. I mean, you need to. I mean, I buy novel books, right? Stephen King, Clive Barker, and etc. I can't remember some of the books that I've read, but some, of course, is uh, more into horror books, sci-fi books, than love stories, I guess. But I already have my love story here, so why watch? Okay, how about you? Why horror story?
Yeah, I've been wanting to answer this because because I have a dark mind.
Yeah.
No, no, just kidding. Horror genre because just like Fritz, we grew up in an age of comic books, and way back then, comic books in the Philippines is really popular. And my dad, when I was little, like when I was 6 years old, he would borrow comics at the store, at the comic store, and he would bring it home. And most of the stories that he'd borrow are horror stories. And at that young age, that triggered my imagination, reading those stories. And I really love how the writers and the illustrators was able to put the stories in a picture and a text in it. And because I was 6 years old, I wasn't a good reader yet, so it encouraged me more to um, practice my reading, and at the same time understand the stories and trigger your imagination about the dark things that are happening in these stories. And sometimes you also dreamt about these stories after you read it, and you sleep at night. And so that's how it all started with the horror genre. And then when I got married to my husband, we also watched a lot of horror stories from Japanese, Thailand, Korean. It was that time where it's almost every day we were watching all of these horror
Yeah.
movies, and it's sickening, it's sickening, but you kind of love it as well, because sometimes I don't know, but sometimes people are used to love being associated with the devil, something like that, because they thought that if they're some kind of evilish, they're kind of strong, because yeah, I think one of the reason is because of our dark minds,
Mhm.
and that we get to write these stories, and because of our imagination as well, and because of our love for the horror stories. That's why we chose the horror genre. And it's so easy to capture one's attention when you write something in horror, especially before, during our time. It's very easy to pick up on horror stories because of stories that you hear from school buildings getting haunted, like from places you go that are haunted and people talk about it, and white ladies and black ladies and things like that people talk about. And even in TV, they would get a lot of attention when you say something, or when you show something that is horror stories. And most of my writings usually are based on personal experiences, things that I heard from my aunts, personal experiences of my own. I usually write from my own experience, but unlike my husband, he's very creative, and he's very visionary, and he writes with his imagination. I I on my end writes with the stories that I heard and experience and encounters that I had in my life, because my imaginary creativity, my imagination is not that strong, and I'm not kind of a visionary kind of a person. So, yeah. But horror genre is definitely one of the genre that sticks into my vocabulary when it comes to writing a book. I really love writing horror stories. I really love reading horror stories and crime stories. That's why.
Yeah, crime stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
CSI.
Yeah, I finished the whole season of CSI, and I watch a lot of
Yeah.
forensic kind of movies, and I also buy a lot of what do you call this, crime and suspense and horror
Yeah.
pocket books that I used to read. Yeah, I have them stuck. in the room.
Yeah, you can see it for now, but our house is full of books. Her books. Her books.
Disclaimer: I'm not a psycho.
Yeah, she liked to read. It widens the vocabulary. Yeah, her vocabulary, of course. Mine, I only have one book of vocabulary, 50 pages. Okay, so we need to move to the next question.
Yeah.
Okay,
Next question, we're
so
ready.
that's it. Why we picked the horror genre. Okay, so question number 3 is how long did it took you to write these stories? Okay, so for me, because I was a rush storyteller writer, is usually when I tell stories, it I create it while I was telling the story. So usually around 1 to 15 minutes, just the highlights, how the story starts and how the would be the highlights of the story in the middle. Then you go to the ending, and then later you formulate it and fill in the gaps while you're trying to be more technical on how the story what do you call this? How the story progress, right? Yeah, and that's why if you able to download our books, you will see that it's just short compilation of short stories. Okay, so pretty much if you're watching a movie, it's the last 15 minutes of the movie where it summarizes everything, all the revealing moments and etc. So, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it, right? But of course, the inspiration on how the book or each story comes about is more on observation of what is happening in the world. Okay, so that's how you try to analyze what is really the horror story behind what is normally happening around us. What if you, what if this happens to the extreme? Then you get the horror story that you wanted. And of course, typically, all those influences just sinks in while you're writing the story. But of course, that spore of 15 minutes, it also had to be written long, come about much longer. I guess it would take you a week or 2 weeks or how do you call this? More than at least a year because when we started, we just targeted that to write a book, at least one book per year. So far we are on book 3, right?
Yeah.
And we're still planning for book 4. And there's a lot of inspiration, but I hope it's going not to be blocked on any social media sites because it's a hot topic. But I guess we're not going to that kind of genre, hopefully, in the coming months because 2020 is almost over. So pretty much maybe we'll do part 4 before this year ends. So we'll see. How about you? How
Yeah.
long did it took you to write these stories?
Well, I just wrote, I think, just 1 or 2 stories in your book, right? So, and the type of writer that I am is I don't usually think about a story that I would write, and I love to write impromptu. So
Mm.
I usually write when I'm forced to write. If I'm under pressure, then I write it faster because I don't know. Sometimes when I started jotting down on paper and the thoughts just flows with it, so then I can finish that story in like an hour maybe if it's super long, but in just a few minutes if I'm really in a hurry. But I don't give a lot of thoughts. Just to tell you honestly, I don't give a lot of thoughts to my stories. I just think about the plot and how it would work, and then I would just write it, and that's it. That's the story. And then I would like submit it to my husband for him to review it, and yeah, he includes it in his book. That's the process.
That is very well said. Just kidding. But she's a chief editor while she was in college, so she write
It's embarrassing.
write very well.
I'm not a good writer.
No, she does. It's just that work takes a lot of time. The actual work, I mean, and the job that we have really takes a lot of time. So we just find time to write the books, and it's like a panata, right? What is panata in English?
I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a pledge.
pledge. Yeah, pledge. Yeah, it's a pledge that keeps us going, inspires us to do right the books, improve more on our writing skills, on our storytelling skills, and who knows? I mean, um, there there will always be an audience, right,
Yeah.
on your the stories that you make, and those audience, we really would like to thank them for downloading the book and reading and taking time to read our crazy stories.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so much, guys.
Yeah. And okay, are we done with question
Yeah,
number 3?
I think
Okay.
we're done.
Yeah, that's how long it took for us to write the stories. Okay, so let's do number 4. What is your writing process? Oh, so it's getting technical. You first.
Writing process, I don't really have a writing process. I don't think that, well, for some people who are well organized about the things that they're doing in life, then they should, I think they have a writing process. But on my end, I don't really have a writing process. It's just that, just as I said, um, I'm kind of an impromptu writer where I would write stories if you force me to. And I would just write it in one sitting and submit it to you. And I don't give a lot of thoughts to it. I'm so sorry about that, but that's the truth. But sometimes, yeah, I think writing something or writing a story, it should come from your heart. If you really like, if you really love to write something, it should come from the heart. And it's, because we also have this what we call writer's block, where no matter how you force yourself to write something, if you have writer's block, you can really write anything at all. But I don't know if it's just me or maybe other people experiences it too, or other writers, but usually I don't write the stories that I have, but I just have them in my mind. And usually they would come when I'm at a moment where I'm alone, like riding a bus or riding somewhere. I usually have a lot of stories in my mind that are, I think, that are really good stories, but I just don't write them down. I just don't. And then after I get off the bus, I forget about it. So
Mm.
there's no such thing as writing process for me. And then when I would write, there are a lot of times that I have writer's block also, where I don't know where to begin, what to begin, or what to write about. But if I'm really inspired, or if I'm really forced, or if I'm really under pressure, then I would write, and I can write stories. Like for example, under pressure, by under pressure I mean like if it's an assignment at school, something like that, and you don't have a choice but to do it, then I would usually do it and I would write. Something like that.
Okay.
Writing process, yeah. Oh, sorry. There's something I wanted to say. Yeah, writing process, I think you should have a pen and a paper in the first place to write it. But right now, you don't need a pen and a paper because we're in a technological age. So maybe you should have your laptop with you or your cell phone with you, and you can write stories if you want to, if you wish to. So it would just start from you jotting down something on your device or on your medium, whatever it is. But you can actually start writing a story. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, for me, for the first book, I guess, no? How do you call this? Usually, coming into from her discussion is that, or me too, has a writer's block. And what happens is that when I do the story, that's why I have a score of 15 minutes from the beginning to the middle highlights, then you have the ending. Um, you have that solid story in your head, okay? But then when you try to put it on writing, then you insert all the details. That's where I get lost. But then, what happened on the first book, I guess, because of the emotions that's was pouring out, and I fell in, like, when you start on writing, then the flow of the story is fluent. I don't know if it's the correct term, and you just continue to write it, uh, just to make a sense of what the story would be. It's just his collection of ideas. That's what I'm trying to say. Beginning of the story, then this is what will happen, then after that, then the ending, then and so on and so forth, character build up, uh, what will be their motivation, what will be, how they would impact the story, and etc. So maybe that's for me. The whole story first, then you put in the details. Then of course, my wife told me, because I told her that I'm not a writer, I'm just a storyteller. But they just said that if you're having a hard time to write it in English, write it on your own language, like in Hiligaynon or Ilonggo or in Tagalog, or you can just mix it around with a English, Filipino, Tagalog. Tama ba yun? Tama yun? Sorry. English, Filipino, then or Hiligaynon. Just put all the ideas there so that you can just refine it later to the final language that you're going to have it published or have it written. So, um, so I did that, and it really helped me a lot to pull out the ideas. And of course, if I hit writer's block, because of course when you write, you also read your stories, and when things doesn't make sense, you need to stop because sometimes your mind just a little bit tired and you're out of inspiration. But of course, I also have that. Sorry, because I love to watch reviews and interviews by famous storytellers, writers, or authors like Clive Barker or Stephen King. I think I forgot whom I heard it, is that what the author mentioned during the interview is that when he just writes, he locked himself on the room for, I guess, for few days, just to keep on writing. and then he just he just write and tell his stories, no, in different story to another. And if in the and after that he would set it aside. Then when he goes back and one of the stories really stays into his mind, that means that he finds it that that would be a nice story that he should finish. Okay, I guess that's the uh, gist of what he was saying. So it means that just continue writing, no, and at the end, one of them probably will be published or shared to the world. And who knows? Uh, some of these stories were actually into in different media already, like audiobook, movies, comics, and etc. So, so for me, that is my writing process. Just get the whole story, then put in the details. Then for the technology, I'm using uh, Notes app. Yeah, it's kind of different on different phones because when I had a BlackBerry, I also have a Note app that I was using because I was trying to put in all my ideas in that notes. Then in the and on the Android phones that I have OneNote by Microsoft, because I was able to sync the notes from a phone to a laptop and etc. So that would make it easy for me to continue writing using that. And and of course, it's much easier to write on the keyboard. I mean, because it's easy to transfer later on the final document. But of course, right now with my note, Samsung Note, I'm also using with a pen because they say that in order mm, to recall, helps you recall on something, you need to write it. It's like the muscle memory. I don't know if it's correct. Yeah, and that's how I also uh, take notes on what are the titles should be, what would be the overall synopsis of the story, and of course, part of that process, writing process, is when I call my wife and tell her, "Ma, I have a new story. You need to listen." Yeah. So that's it for me in what is my writing process. Okay, so we'll move on to the
Yeah,
last
we're
question.
almost done, guys. To the last question.
Okay, so for the last question, what are your future plans? So my wife's plan comes first.
If you ask me, I don't have a plan.
Ah,
I don't plan the future per se. But yeah, it's up to my husband because, as I've said, he's the one forcing me to do all of these things.
yes, I'm a Jedi. Jedi mind trick.
So yeah, he has this force within him. He is the Jedi. He is Lord Darth Vader. Darth Vader.
Yeah, I think if I'm going to be one of the Jedi characters, I'll be Lord Darth
Darth
Vader.
So,
And I keep recalling the comedian. Okay, so okay, so future plans. Of course, sometimes it's best that you have a plan. Okay, in whatever thing you do, may it be simple or advanced. Because at times when
you're so opposite.
everything else fails, at least you already planned it. Yeah. because you need to see all the possibilities and where your life direction should be. No. May it happen or not, but at least you have that plan. So for the future plans of horror stories of genre of sorry horror stories of Glenda and Fritz is we're going to keep writing the stories. Um, may it be if we're selling it or maybe it's for free now because it's uh, writing in passion now where we love writing.
It's his outlet.
Yeah. It's nice to share your life with your partner and of course to the persons who like reading those books. And yeah, as we mentioned earlier, we're doing the part 4 this year and so on and so forth on the next. And yeah, I guess it's good to be scared, keep scared, but still have faith, no? And because there's a lot of things happening in the world, right? And who knows? And I guess this is why we started the video podcast because we uh, want to tell our stories and where we come from. And, you know, uh, no one knows after 40 years when the earth has been wiped out and the new generation comes in, they would see this podcast. I don't know.
With the stored in the
Yeah.
cloud. I'm not sure if in the coming years, if the cloud will still exist or if it will be replaced by a more advanced alien technology,
Yeah,
which is other than cloud.
it will be
It may be the
the
universe.
mist.
Yeah. There's a lot that's just gonna happen. So, yeah, future plans would be to continue writing, of course.
Yeah,
To
and
continue to inspire each other and to force each other to write. That's the way
yeah,
it should be.
you need to, how do you call this? Try to improve yourself in a daily basis. Because who knows, you might need that skill. And not only for you, but then to those you can share it with. We're not that an expert, but yeah. Yeah. And of course, let me show you. Well, we'll finish on the question.
I think we're good with the Q&A.
Yeah, I'm
and
doing the Q&A. And of course, we're going to do a little uh, plug, right?
Yeah, we're going
On-
to plug our book.
Yeah, plug our book. And of
Segue,
course,
guys, segue.
horror stories of Glenda and Fritz. Started from Tagalog, of course, there are Tagalog uh, uh, language, but then we migrated to English as we are experimenting from one language to another. But of course, there are to reach more readers across the board.
To reach a wider audience.
Yeah. And we're still thinking to do a Tagalog
Yeah.
version, of course, and English version. And
Yeah.
a correct English version and correct Tagalog version.
Yeah. I think our book needs a lot of editing, but that is
Yeah.
to get started with it. That's the important thing is you get started with something.
They say it's the thought that counts. I hope I thought correct.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Okay, so as you can see on the first batch earlier, here are the 3 books of
The series.
series, Horror Stories of Glenda and Fritz. The first one was mga horror stories ni na Glenda at Fritz. These have at least 4 short stories.
Yeah. That's right.
Book 1, we have Famous, we have Suicide Club, The Apartment, and The Restaurant. So And of course, the second book, I guess, I don't know, 5 stories?
Yeah, I think we have 5 stories in the book.
Yeah, and the third book has 3 stories, I guess.
Yeah,
Much
3
shorter.
stories.
Much longer a bit,
Mm.
but much on shorter stories, much longer, shorter stories. No, that's correct. Now, much
No, just
3 stories, but
3 stories.
longer pages. I don't know. Just kidding. Okay, and where can you find us? Yeah, of course, the books are available. Our publisher. We publish the books using lulu.com. That's where we get our ISBN.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Lulu is pretty good to us. Most of our books are free, but still they're still there. There are, I guess, 6 books published there. Of course, listed by contributors. Actually, Lulu.com changed their website uh, since 2014. This is the new look this year. I don't know if last year it's kind of different, but I guess this is their new web page this year. Okay, you can visit lulu.com and you can download our content there. And of course, you can visit us or get the books as well from Google Play. Okay, Google Play. You can just go to your app on your mobile phone or, yeah, on your mobile phone, then download the books there. Of course, you can also download it on your desktop. The books are available in PDF format. Okay, so and you can carry it anywhere, and it's a short read. So at least you can finish the book, I guess, within 1 hour or 30 minutes, 15 minutes sitting.
Yeah, different. You're a fast reader. You can.
Okay, so here's an overview, no, of our downloads, just to plug it in. So on Google Play Books, we already have a 5,444 downloads, and
Yeah.
that is the
Thank you, guys.
individual download count per book. Yeah, it's really nice to have a wide, at least audience, no? Reading the book. We are grateful for your continued support and continued downloads.
Thank you so much for downloading our book.
It inspires us more to write more books on this genre and on this series. And of course, in lulu.com, we also have 452. Okay? So thank you, Lulu, and thank you, Google Play Books.
And thank you, guys, for your download. Thank you for reading the book. I hope that somehow you're able to enjoy some of the stories. And yeah, I hope you're able to relate to some of the stories and enjoy it. And just a disclaimer, I'm not saying myself that I'm a good writer or something, but we're just here to, at least inspire some people that even though you're just an ordinary person, that you can write something and that you can share it to the world for them to read. It might not, and yeah, I think you should accept both good and bad critics because they're a part of your journey into writing, and bad critics will make you improve your writing, and yeah, good critics will also make you improve your writing. So you just have to accept both of them, and not all people are gonna like your stories. That's fine. Just continue writing because that's the way life should be. Who cares, you know?
Yeah.
It's you who's enjoying these things, and it's not them.
Yeah. And it's nice to know that there are a lot of people that can relate to your stories, and of course, they can uh, be inspired and write their own, uh, their own genre. It depends on what stories that they have. And of course, aside from the horror series that we have, horror stories with Glenda and Fritz, my wife started years back a love story of English and Tagalog, right?
Yeah.
And it was a Facebook group. And I guess we have 40,000 plus
Yeah, we have 40,000
writers.
plus members, but
Yeah.
right, yeah, it lacks administration right now because we're so busy, so we can't really monitor the page. But the members are still there, and they were sticking there. Some of them are writers as well, and some of them are people who loves to read stories, and some of them are just there to, I don't know, to be a member of the page. But yeah, we created a Facebook page called Tagalog and English Love Story. You can find it on Facebook as well. And
Yeah.
we have plugged in some of our stories in there also. So.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of budding writers who are joining that page as well because they can share their stories there, and there's no judgment. Whatever stories you have, you just put in there, and people are just gonna read it if they want it, and just ignore it if they don't want it.
Yeah, and there are always an audience to your story. And of course, shout out to Mom.
Yeah, to Miss Jenny, who is the one of the administrator of that
Yeah,
page.
Mom Jenny.
She's
Yeah.
a really good writer as well.
And a very good administrator.
Yeah, she is.
And what she do usually is she summarized the stories and repost it on the page with the links on it, and it's easier for the members to get back into and continue reading these stories.
That's right. Hopefully, we can manage that page later if we have more time.
Yeah,
And we
yeah,
can write some more stories and encourage more writers to be a member of it and publish their stories there.
it's kind of organic, right? It's like it has its life of its own because
Yeah,
there are
it's
a lot
life
of
of its own. A lot of people are coming
Yeah.
there. And I've seen some people do live feeds, but some people are not even related. We can't filter them out right now, but
there are a lot of
Yeah.
sellers there too.
yeah, a lot of sellers have went in there and have their videos.
And game
Yeah,
broadcast, yeah,
yeah, game streamers, live streamers.
yeah. It's
They
okay,
can
guys.
use the
It's
page,
okay.
but we're okay with it. We're open, whatever they wanted to do. Just as long as it's their passion and they're not doing something bad. We're
Yeah,
not influencing people with bad things. Then we're okay with it.
especially at this time, right?
Yeah, especially at this time that
Each
people,
one has to keep their own selves busy and their
Mm,
how do you call this, psyche intact.
yes.
We need to keep going and keep on moving forward because this situation that we're in, it will pass. I mean, it will pass.
Everything has an end. You know?
Yeah.
Even us has our end. That's dark.
Well,
Well, that's the
that
truth.
might be that might be one of our stories this
Yeah, that
this
we
year.
can write.
We'll know.
Mm.
Okay, so I guess that's it.
Yeah, that's
And
the end of
thank you
our story.
for joining us
Thank
on
you,
this
guys.
first pilot video podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening to our really long story and conversation. I think it's almost an hour.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's almost an hour. So,
Sorry for that, but we're really chatty.
so shout out to Nanay in Iloilo City, Manang in the U.S., of course, Tita Myrna and family in Barrio Obrero, and of course, Mama Glo in
Panay.
Panay.
Shout out to Fam Bam,
Yeah.
my sisters and my broskies.
So thank you again, and that's it for
This
the
first episode.
first episode.
We made it. Thank you guys for listening to the Dark Minds. Thank you, psychos.
It's kind of it's kind of eerie.
It's creepy.
Yeah. So bye guys,
Bye.
and always wear your mask, your face shield, and if you don't have
Especially if
anything
you're
to
going outside.
do outside that is not important, please stay at home. Please stay at home, and of course keep your health up. And of course, hopefully we see you on our next episode of Horror Stories of Glenda and Fritz. So again, this is Fritz and
This is Glenda. Bye, guys.
bye guys. Bye.
Bye, psychos.